and go with me on a picnic to the graveyard. Well, it might sound a little unusual to our standards, but it's a very important part of the holiday that's celebrated in Mexico called El Día de los Muertos, which is Spanish for the Day of the Dead. Now, the Day of the Dead is a unique holiday. It's steeped in history and tradition, and is an important part of Mexican culture. This morning I'm going to share with you a little bit about the history of the Day of the Dead, and also how the holiday is celebrated throughout Mexico. Now, the Day of the Dead, as I said, is celebrated, it's celebrated in November. It's celebrated November 1st and 2nd in Mexico. It's about 90% of Mexicans celebrate the Day of the Dead, which causes for a major increase in the Mexican economy, according to La Entrevista, which is a newspaper that's in Mexico. It causes an increase in the economy of about 1/3, which is a substantial increase in the Mexican economy. Now, the holiday started with the Aztecs in Mexico, who for 2 months out of the year they celebrated death. Now, they had a very unusual way of looking at death. They really didn't fear death, but they feared the uncertainty of life. Now, what they believed was that with death, you would have, it wasn't so much that you would you'd go to a good place or a bad place depending on your works, but what you were depended on what you were going to be whenever you would die. For example, if you were a warrior, you would join a land of warriors and butterflies, and you would become, that would be your afterlife. Now, when the Christians came to Mexico in 1492, they brought with them their celebration of death, which is All Saints' Day, which is November 1st. Which is where the two combined made El Día de los Muertos. And that's also where we get the American celebration of Halloween. Now, unlike Halloween, the Day of the Dead is not a spooky, scary occasion like we would imagine Halloween is. It's also not a sad time. As a matter of fact, I interviewed a friend of mine from Mexico named Javier in preparation for the speech, and Javier said that you're not supposed to cry for the Day of the Dead, because if you do cry, the tears would fall on the ground, and the dead people would slip and fall and really get hurt, if they could get hurt, I guess. But they believe that the dead people would come back and have a big picnic with them in the graveyard. And what I'd like to do now is just kind of show you just a couple of things about the Day of the Dead. A couple things that you would happen to see if you were in Mexico celebrating the Day of the Dead. Now, around the beginning of, the latter part of October, you would happen to see a lot of banners start being around a lot of the churches. Most of Mexico is Roman Catholic, so a lot of banners would have names of Catholic saints, or perhaps dead people that they are remembering. Let's see, actually one says Bienvenidos, which means welcome, right here. I guess they're welcoming the dead people back for the celebration. There's also a lot of food dealt with the Day of the Dead celebration. This particular food is a bread. It's called pan de muerto, which is Spanish for bread of the dead. And you see these little white things here. These are actually sugar skulls. They're sticking out of the bread, and it's just a very sweet bread that you would eat in celebration for the Day of the Dead. And the sugar skulls, they're not meant to be eaten. You can't eat sugar skulls. Around the start of the Day of the Dead, you'll start to see lots of skeletons.
New grandson.
Kind of creeping in from the United States, but for the most part, it's mainly skeletons that you would see. Back to the sugar skulls. They would save these sugar skulls. This way. They would save these sugar skulls from year to year, and they would have the names of the dead people that died that year, sometimes even Catholic saints. You see here we have Luisa and Jaime and Georgina. There are some people that died. And like I said, they'll save these skulls year after year. And there's other little things like little caskets and things, and that you would see. Remember, it's not a scary holiday. It's just a holiday to remember the dead people. And this is like a miniature version of the bread of the dead, which you can eat. The sugar skulls you can't. As I already said before, this holiday does cost a great deal of money to the Mexican people. They buy flowers, they buy food, they spend a lot of money getting ready for the cemetery. They frantically paint buildings in the cemetery, clean the cemetery, buy flowers. This particular lady here is setting up an altar in her home with ofrendas, which is the Spanish word for offering. And the altar will have the favorite food of the dead person that died. You see this person here, liked fruit and had to drink their Pepsi. And then you also see the marigolds, which is a symbol of the Day of the Dead. I was also reading, and there's a Mexican anthropologist who said that the most unusual thing that she's ever seen on a Day of the Dead altar is a big gulp from 7-Eleven. I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay. The dead people have to find their way back for the party. And that's what this little girl here is doing. She's spreading marigolds up the path into the home so the dead people can find their way back to the party. They will also maybe light candles a lot of times up the sidewalk. They let off fireworks, and they think it's all worth it so the dead people can come back and enjoy the party. Going back to this slide here for a moment. This food will stay on the altar for the dead until November 1st. And then they take all this food to the cemetery where they have the party, and they believe that the spirit comes into the home and eats the food. Of course, the spirit really doesn't eat the food, but they say that the food will have no taste when you eat it, because the dead has already come and eaten the food and taken away the taste. Whether you believe that, I don't know. On November 1st, they have a gigantic party in the graveyard. You see that all the family comes together. They light candles. There's music. There's dancing. There's singing. A lot of activities going on. And this party would go all day November 1st and all night into November 2nd. And like I said, they go all the way into the night with the party. They light the candles and they have vigils and whatnot. And then, most of Mexico is Roman Catholic, so they'll perhaps have masses for the dead and such. And then, after the dead is over, you have to get the dead people to go back to the graveyard. They can't hang around Mexico City very long. So what they would do is they will dress up in masks, like the one I showed you earlier, and like this boy has here. And they're actually mummers, and what they're doing is they're scaring the dead people back to their graves. And they stay there until next year. And by the end of November 2nd, the party is over. The dead return back to the world of the dead. Like I said, the mummers would chase them back, and their souls remain in the grave. The living and the dead are left with peace for another year.